Let's take a squiz at ways in which food may become contaminated and how such contamination can be avoided. Food may become contaminated in a number of ways during transport, storage, handling, processing, or display. Such contamination may occur as a result of physical or microbiological contamination. Physical contamination may result from foreign objects such as hair, fingernails, Band-Aid, pins, thumbtacks, metal fragments, plastic dust, insects, or other objects that can find their way into food. Such physical contamination occurs when food packaging does not remain intact during transport, when food handlers do not take appropriate precautions to ensure their body or anything from their body does not contaminate food, when food processing in storage areas are not kept clean, when non-food items are not stored separately from food preparation areas, or when equipment is not maintained. Chemical contamination occurs when chemicals come into contact with food. This may result from chemicals such as cleaning products, sanitizers, or insect repellents being stored in close proximity to food or food processing areas, or when food contact items are cleaned but not rinsed adequately. Chemical contamination may also occur if chemicals are stored in old food containers and not adequately labelled. Microbiological contamination occurs from bacteria. At certain levels, bacteria may be harmless, but if food is not stored correctly or not cooked properly, such bacteria may multiply to dangerous levels. Bacteria may also be passed from one food to another if appropriate separation of foods does not occur. For example, separating raw chicken, which naturally has a lot of bacteria that will be killed during cooking, from salmon ingredients, which are ready-to-eat foods, and therefore the bacteria will not be killed prior to the food being consumed. Microbiological contamination can be avoided by keeping raw and ready-to-eat foods separate, storing and displaying foods at the correct temperature, and ensuring adequate cooking to kill bacteria. Throughout I Am Alert Food Safety, you will learn many ways in which food should be handled, stored, and displayed, so as to ensure physical, chemical, or microbiological contamination does not occur. Welcome to I'm Alert Food Safety Training. Let's take a squiz at the requirements surrounding the packaging of food by the food business. The food business must, when packaging food, only use material that is fit for its intended use. For example, if the food item is intended to be frozen or microwaved, you must use packaging that is suited for this process. The material used must not cause food to become contaminated. Packaging that is contaminated with dirt, dust, or other foreign material must not be used. When packaging food with plastic, you must ensure that this plastic is food-grade quality. Chemicals from non-food grade plastic may leach into the food. The supplier of the packaging material should be able to tell you if the plastic used is food grade. Packaging should be stored in a clean area, away from non-food related items, such as cleaning chemicals or administration items, so as to prevent the likelihood of contamination. The food business must also ensure that there is no likelihood that the food may become contaminated during the packaging process. Food should be packaged in a clean area using clean equipment. When necessary, food handlers should take care to ensure that they themselves do not contaminate the food. When selling packaged food, the food business should be aware of the labelling requirements for that particular food. In most cases, as a minimum, the label must include the name of the food, the list of ingredients in descending white order, the name and address of the packager, manufacturer and/or importer, a nutrition panel. The Nutrition Information Panel provides customers with nutritional information about the food product. Nutrition information panels are mandatory on the majority of prepackaged foods and are used by or best before date. The best before is the date at which the quality of the product should last to. It is not illegal to sell past the best before date if the food product has not deteriorated or perished, etc. The use by date is the date in which the product can be safely consumed. The product should not be consumed after this date for health and safety reasons. It is illegal to sell food products that are past their use by date. You should contact the relevant state health department for further information relating to labelling requirements for your particular product. At food safety training. Let's take a squiz at the requirements when displaying food in the food premises. A food business must, when displaying food, take all practicable measures to protect the food from a likelihood of contamination. For packaged food, this will mean ensuring that the packaging remains intact. For unpackaged food, in the case of non-ready-to-eat food, such as raw meats and fruits and vegetables, such food should be protected from contamination by dirt, dust and pests. For unpackaged foods that are ready to eat and available to customers for self-service, certain requirements are in place to prevent such food becoming contaminated. Unpackaged, ready-to-eat food are the types of food found at small guest boards, buffet-style restaurants, self-service salad bars, self-served confectionery and nuts in supermarkets, also self-served nuts and chips at bars. One requirement is that these foods on display be effectively supervised, so that any food that is contaminated by a customer or is likely to have been contaminated be removed from display without delay. For example, if a customer coughs or sneezes near the food, or touches food and then puts it back, or the handle of the utensil falls into the food. Another requirement is that separate serving utensils be used for each food, or that the food is dispensed using such a method that minimises the likelihood of food being contaminated. This will help to ensure that the customers do not handle the food, and also prevent the risk of transferring contamination from one food to another. The final requirement is that the protective barriers be provided that minimise the likelihood of contamination by customers. Such protective barriers should provide a barrier between the customer's breath and the food on display. This may take the form of a permanent barrier over a tray or uncovered food, or simply keeping lids on the food, which are replaced by the customer directly after use. In the case of ready-to-eat food that is not intended for self-service, such food must not be displayed on any counter or bar unless it is enclosed, contained or wrapped, so that the food is protected from likelihood of contamination. When displaying both raw and ready-to-eat foods, such foods must be kept separate, so as to prevent the contamination of the ready-to-eat food. For example, barriers may be used in the display cabinet to separate such foods. When displaying potentially hazardous food, such food must be displayed under temperature control, that is, cold food at or below 5 degrees Celsius and hot food at or above 60 degrees Celsius. Potentially hazardous food that is being displayed above 5 degrees Celsius and or below 60 degrees Celsius for more than 4 hours is to be discarded. When displaying food that is intended to be displayed frozen, the food business must ensure that the food remains frozen during this time. Welcome to I'm Alert Food Safety Training. Let's take a squiz at food storage and the requirements for storing food in your premises in a manner that ensures safety and suitability of the food. Food storage areas include dry storage, frozen storage and refrigerated storage. Food should be stored in such a way that it is protected from the likelihood of contamination. Contamination may result from microbiological contamination, chemical contamination, or contamination from foreign objects. Microbiological contamination may occur when raw meat is stored next to or above ready-to-eat foods. Juices containing bacteria from this meat may leach onto ready-to-eat food, potentially leading to food poisoning if this contaminated ready-to-eat food is consumed. To avoid such contamination, raw meat should always be stored separate from and below ready-to-eat foods. Contamination may also be the result of chemicals coming into contact with food. This may occur if chemicals are stored in close proximity to food. Chemical contamination may also occur if food is stored in direct contact with non-food containers. An example is when rice or flour is stored in direct contact with plastic garbage bins. These bins may not be food-grade plastic, so chemicals from plastic may leach onto food. To avoid chemical contamination, always make sure that chemicals are stored separate to food storage areas, and the food is stored in appropriate food-grade containers. Another source of contamination is from foreign objects. Foreign objects such as dirt, pests, hair, glass and plastic may contaminate food if the premises is not kept clean, well organised, and if food is not stored in vermin-proof sealed containers. To prevent contamination from foreign objects, ensure food storage areas are clean and free from pests. Non-food related items are stored separately, such as admin items, for example pen lids or thumb texts that may fall into food, and that food is stored fully in enclosed containers at all times. Another way to protect food during storage is to ensure that food is stored off the floor. If necessary, the only food to be stored on the floor is to be in bulk, impervious containers that will not cause problems cleaning the floor areas. That is, they should be able to be moved when cleaning. Such containers must not be moved from the floor onto the food preparation benches, as this may cause contamination of the food preparation bench. Environmental conditions under which food is stored should not adversely affect the safety or suitability of the food. Such conditions may relate to temperature, humidity, light, or atmosphere. You should refer to manufacturer's specifications for any particular requirements regarding this. Potentially hazardous food must be stored under temperature control. This means storing cold food at or below 5 degrees Celsius and hot food at or above 6 degrees Celsius. When food is stored between 5 degrees Celsius and 60 degrees Celsius, harmful bacteria can multiply to levels that may lead to food poisoning. This zone between 5 and 60 degrees Celsius is often referred to as a temperature danger zone.